99.9 WEFM.
Activated mornings on WeFM 99.9 is on now.
Welcome back, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The time is 7:45. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Ariane. With me today is Roleza, and we are activated mornings this morning. Unfortunately, we have to continue down the road of bad news. News that surfaced on Sunday revealed that police in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines police force had shot and killed a Mackey's Hill resident who is said to have had mental health issues. He died on Sunday morning after police shot him in the chest. Reports are that one of the man's relatives went to the police complaining that he had attacked them with a knife. Officers responding accompanying the relatives to the location. When they arrived, they told the man to put down the weapon. However, he allegedly rushed at the officers, one of whom discharged a round which struck the man in the chest. Well-placed sources tell Eyewitness News that the man died after being shot. When his body was examined, he allegedly had a second knife in his waist. The fatal shooting comes just 2 weeks after police issued a press release informing the public that the police recruits were receiving additional training in de-escalating situations involving mentally ill people. The training was provided in partnership with the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center, the Police Public Relations Department said in a March 26 release. The release said that the training teaches officers the escalation and de-escalation cycle. One more time, the release said that the training teaches the officers the escalation and the de-escalation cycle. Causes of escalation, imminent danger signs to identify and escalating situation, and the 3 A's of de-escalating: awareness, assessment, action. The 3 A's of de-escalation: awareness, assessment, and action.
Is there something that you want to say, Ari?
I'm gonna say it. And how to positively de-escalate a situation involving mental health patients. Hi. Now, people love to say, "Oh, I beat up on police," or police are doing some stupid. Again, easily found. You just have to Google mentally ill person shot and killed, SVG. And you will find a number of stories like this. Again, another question that I've been asking: are police officers being trained to de-escalate a situation? If a man charges at you with a knife, you, as a trained police officer, your first thought is to murder him? Because you ain't shooting him in the chest for fun. You ain't shooting him in the chest to slow him down. You're shooting him in the chest to kill him. So is what? You're racking up bodies?
I'll leave you later talk. I'll speak after.
No, so I'm wondering, they're racking up bodies. I personally, as a citizen here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I would be concerned. Let's say I'm in a fight. Police show up to the scene. The fight could go anyway. Because one, a lot of police not uniformed. A lot of police don't identify themselves as police officers. So you might see somebody coming while in a fight and thinking this person jumping with this man. You charge at them, boom, one in your chest. Or they could de-escalate
about this a lot.
I think about these things. So when they pop up in the news, I'm like, really, that's still happening? Because whether the man was mentally ill or not, it's still nonsense. If it is that he had a gun and he drew the gun, I understand. But what was he going to do with this knife?
Stab.
Okay.
All right. You finished?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So there are a couple of things in that's coming out of this, right? So I hear Ari's passion in speaking on this topic because yes, it's something that has happened already here in SVG, and I suppose we have to wonder how many more incidents like this need to happen in order for there to be a different method of trying to restrain mentally ill persons, especially mentally ill persons with a weapon, right? Now, I'm not a police officer. I have never been in a situation where somebody charged at me with a weapon. So I have to also just be a little bit cautious in terms of certain things that I would say, right? One of the things that I have always been curious about, right? So Ari spoke about there being a training for recruits. Now, the question that I have to ask is, so yes, recruits are getting the de-escalation training, but how many of the officers who have to report to incidents, who have to report to scenes of crimes or scenes of acts being committed, get this refreshers training in de-escalation, right? Is it a case where they get it that one time during training school and then it's forgotten about? Because remember, the thing too is that unless you practice certain things, it's going to go away from you. You're not necessarily going to retain that for the rest of your life. So I have to ask the question, after they have received that training in training school, do current officers get repeat and constant training in these particular situations? Because it's going to come up again, right? Another question is in terms of the shooting, was it, what was the actual intention? Because I'm thinking that if you're trying to restrain somebody and you are going to pull a weapon, yes, I know it's easy for me to stand on the sidelines and think
Listen,
through a situation.
You are not
right?
a person. You're a police officer. You're trained. They're trained to deal with this.
But could it have been a case where if you are going to shoot, do you shoot in the foot? Do you shoot in the knee? Do you shoot in the leg so that they happen to fall, as opposed to aiming for their chest, right? The other thing too that I have a question about is it necessary, if you are going to respond to a situation where it's somebody who's mentally ill, you're going to be, I'm sure you're going to know beforehand that you're going to go to this situation because somebody is mentally ill. Why is it that the police officers don't, let's say, have tasers, right? Instead of carrying weapons, why don't they use tasers so that they can subdue the individual, as opposed to, yes, even if the person is charging at them, rather than shooting the individual, restrain them using tasers? So is this something that maybe the police force needs to invest in as well?
I could see the point that you're trying to make, but I can't agree with the taser thing in a situation like that, because if you reach to tase him, he could have stabbed you in the hand. So
I'm sure that you can hold it from a distance, can't you? Hold
unless
it from
unless it's one of those
distance?
taser guns, then that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
A taser gun make a lot of sense to me.
Right.
As opposed to killing him, shooting him in the chest. That seems like an extreme to me. That's a big extreme to me. Hey. And I'm wondering, what's the age and experience of the officer in question? I'm wondering, will he be disciplined for something like this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember this situation happened, was it last year or year before in Real Honor, if I'm not mistaken? Something similar happened, you know, so it doesn't need to be a pattern, right? If you've seen that it's happened once, clearly the police force recognizes that there is a need to know how to deal with such situations. At this point in time, we don't need to see recurring incidents of persons being shot, because I mean, the mentally ill aren't always aware of what it is that they're doing. So we also have to look at them as a human in that regard, of somebody who's not quite there in terms of their mental capabilities, faculties, etc. So the police force has to find a different way to, when they have to go on respond to reports, to find different ways to try to as we say, de-escalate the situation.
And you know what they say?
What do they say?
If a police kills somebody in carrying out their duties, it's not murder.
It's a homicide. It's homicide. It goes in a different category.
It goes in a different category. Yeah. It doesn't go into the homicide count. But some of these officers trigger happy, because I cannot picture a situation where you, as a trained officer, and like Eyewitness News stated, the police just put out a report saying that they're training people, they're doing additional training for this. How?
But remember, I keep saying they're training recruits. So what happened to those who are actively already in the force?
You know, we should talk about how they don't have training for a lot of things. How they don't know how to resuscitate people. How some of them can't. No, you're not, but it's a serious thing. Some of them can't swim. Some of them can't dive.
Where it came from.
Yeah, some of them can't swim. Some of them can't dive. And the other question is, did he aim at his chest? And if he wasn't aiming at his chest, that's concerning. How you have a fireman can't shoot? There's so many questions in this, and they tend to like be swept under the rug because you don't know the person directly, or oh, it's a mentally ill person, so let's just dismiss this until it happens to somebody that you care about, until it happens to somebody that you know. It's a serious thing. That this thing is a very, very serious thing, and it needs to be addressed sooner than later. Because what else? What next? We had this last year. We had it years ago. It's not something new.
And I mean, the other thing too is that even when you walk through Kingston, like I don't know, boys, like every day I see somebody, a new face popping up, you know. And one of the worrying things is that there are some of them who, you know, they ain't quite there, but they're openly walking with weapons in town. And sometimes I wonder, what is it going to take to trigger just one of these persons? I know there's one of this guy, or I know I don't know, he just ain't seem too right, but he always walk around selling knives.
Boy.
You know, so it's another thing when you observe them in Kingston and nobody takes the weapons away from them, but then they may, whatever reason, act up and do something to somebody who's an innocent person just walking through Kingston. So it's all these little things, you know, all of these little things that we have to look at.
I just think at the end of the day, and I won't get tired saying this, the police are there to protect us and enforce laws. They're also there to settle petty disputes. And we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines do not pay as much attention as we should to mental health issues.
That's what I'm very much in agreement with.
We don't know
yes.
what is going on in that person's head. We don't know how they're processing things. We might be processing life like everybody else, but we'd never know where somebody is on the spectrum. We do not know what is going on with them. We do not know what they're suffering from.
And we chalk everything up to just being crazy.
Yeah, that's like crazy man. Oh, police kill a crazy man. Who cares?
Yeah.
You can't do that. That crazy man is somebody's son. That crazy man is somebody's daughter. Sorry, that crazy person is somebody's daughter, somebody's son. It's somebody's parent. You do not know. There are a lot of people here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that crack under pressure.
Yeah, I always remember there's this quote from Grey's Anatomy. It said, don't wonder what it takes, what causes us to hold it together. Wonder what it is that causes us not to fall apart. You know, I'm paraphrasing it. I can't remember the exact thing, but I'll always remember it because it is a thin line. You know, I always think that there are so many things that we can go through in life that can give us a mental breakdown. You know, so it's also another thing too, in terms of if you think that you're not okay, a family member see that you're not okay, trying to seek help. And I guess seeking help in a safe space, because that is the other thing where we're talking about, you know, you might be showing a little signs of not being okay. And then people just automatically say you're crazy. You know, maybe you just need to talk through your situation.
I remember, mentally challenged people are not always a drug addict. They're not always a homeless person. These drug addicts, these homeless people are regular Vincentians. The people that worked as cashiers, people that worked as pole climbers at Vinlake, plumbers from CWSA. They were people who were going along regular life and they could not process certain things, or they have a drug addiction and that they never recovered from, or they just the trauma of losing somebody. You do not know what is exactly going on with somebody. Could you imagine? Paint a picture. Somebody working at, let's say, Bank of SVG, regular cashier, well dressed, taking care of themselves, polite, good morning, good evening, open the door for everybody. They're very close with their sister. The sister dies, someone knocks them down in tongue, kills her immediately. He does not know how to process the loss of somebody that they've known their entire life. Turns to a substance, or doesn't even turn to a substance, just didn't know how to process it and break down.
Just have the mental breakdown.
And you do not know where that breakdown landed them on the spectrum. And no, because we don't understand what they're thinking, what they might be thinking is a cry for help, charging at somebody. We look at it as an attack. We call the police, which is normal.
Or maybe it wasn't even a deliberate. I'm not saying the charging. The charging may not have even been deliberate. It just might have been reactionary to something.
Because we do not know how they are processing things.
Yeah.
And then boom, they killed. And you have to put yourself in these situations sometimes and not just dismiss it as, oh, it's a crazy man police killed, we'll move on with our lives.
And
it's
even,
a serious thing.
And even with parents, I would also say that parents, you have to observe your child. And even if your child is a little different, right? You have to find a way to let them know that they are still accepted and they're still loved, right? Because there are many persons who can still function in society as long as they feel as if they're not going to be ostracized, they're not going to be criticized, they're not going to be laughed at, they're not going to be mocked. So I think as we're speaking about the whole mental health situation here in SVG, it's a little bit more on, I guess, on the part of society as well. I know that the patients themselves also need to do their part, and sometimes it's so difficult to get them to understand why taking medication might be important. But sometimes some of them say that taking medication, they don't feel like as if they are alive. They just feel lethargic and they just feel as if everything is routine and they don't feel like themselves. But I think maybe it's just a bit more of education that we need to have within society. We also need to pay attention to the fact that when we go through the different stages in our lives, and there are going to be many stages in our lives that can give us a mental breakdown, right? Because sometimes it's not just one thing that you're dealing with, but you're dealing with multiple things happening within your life at the same time. So it's being able to maybe as Ari says, to process, to be able to seek help. Maybe if it's just a simple case of having this one safe friend who you can vent to repeatedly about the same thing until a resolution is found. We have to find ways to try to cope and to adjust, because being human isn't easy.
And to wrap up this segment, there's a question here on WhatsApp. So after the police killed him, who is left to bury the body? Him, his family members, or the police?
Family members. It will be
Who
family members.
Who is bearing that cost? The time is 8:02 here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and your time check was brought to you by New Haven Funeral Home.
Death is a fact of life.